Hello, welcome everyone to Sports Psyche Talk, India Kapna Sports Talk Show. Today we have a very distinguished guest with us, Mr. Shayamal Vallabhjee. Mr. Shayamal is a performance psychologist. He's a coach and a sports scientist with a specialization in team dynamics and personality. He have over 2 decades of experience working in the performance and sports industry uh, as a working with elite athletes, executives on the mindset and communication and team dynamics. He is currently faculty member with the Stanford Business School lead program and advisor to numerous Fortune 500 and 1000 companies. Sports psychology and the technology brands and the championship winning sports teams. As a speaker, he has delivered over 1,000 workshops, seminars, keynotes globally. His approach to performance coaching blends with evidence-based sports science practices with the cognitive behavioral science and the spirituality as well. We welcome you, Mr. Shamal. Thanks for being on our platform.
Thank you
Uh,
so
so
much, Karan. Thank you so much, Karan, for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
My first question to you, Shamil, actually, you have a long experience. We can see you spend, a lot of time in the sport industry and working primarily around the performance and the athletes, especially the elite athletes. How you describe your journey? If you can share the glimpse of your journey with our audience.
Uh, yeah, Karan, my journey wasn't engineered in any shape and form. I started off, I studied uh, sports and exercise science at the University of Durban, Westville. It's now called the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Then I went on to work with the human body. In the university when I was studying, there was not a lot of technology being taught in the curriculum at that stage. I'm talking 1997, 1998. Technology didn't exist and it wasn't being taught at university. But at the same time, I was coaching a professional state cricket team called the Dolphins in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. Their home ground is Kingsmead, where I also played a lot of cricket. So technology was a big, I saw technology creating a massive advantage for our team. So I started to learn, I started to do internships with companies, connect with lots of companies to understand how to integrate technology from a fitness testing, from a tracking point of view. We did all sorts of things. I remember in those days when I had to record a game, I had to buy VHS tapes, which were 2 hours or 3 hour VHS tapes, and I had to give it to the production company who made a copy of the game for me. And then they gave it to me after that. Then I had to digitize that. I had to cut snippets of it, export it onto my hard drive, then analyze it with different softwares. This was how difficult it was almost 2 decades ago. And then once I moved in and I understood technology, I also started to understand that the mind played a very, very strong part. I spent 4 years living in a temple. I went on to do a master's in psychology and then another master's in organized psychology, understanding only teams and specializing in teams. So the journey has been one of exploring curiosity. I think that's the best way to describe it. When I saw something that could potentially give my athletes or my team an advantage, I became very curious to explore that. Most of the time, I was spending my own money to even travel, to learn, to study, to buy equipment. And that's how I was able to learn faster than most people in my ecosystem around that. And incidentally, even today, uh, I probably spend thousands of dollars a year just on exploring different types of technologies that come into the market to see how it could integrate with my athletes, how I could use it, what is the quality of the data coming in. Almost every single month, I have a new piece of technology that comes into my life that I'm exploring the use of with respect to how I can improve the performance of my athletes.
Coming on to this, your involvement or your interest into the team dynamics and especially the leadership. I think I also came across some people talking about you and your leadership abilities while working you as a performance psychologist with the teams. How you bring that perspective or concept in terms of inculcating that into a team, and what is your take on team dynamics and its relation with the personality, or maybe the impact of team dynamics or personality on the team dynamics?
So every single one of us uh, have a different personality, different strengths, different weaknesses. These play out in the way we process information, in the way we retain information, also in the way we communicate. Now, communication is the foundation of any healthy environment, whether you have an environment at home with the wife and kids or children, or you have an environment in your boardroom amongst your board members or your employees, and similarly, that environment inside the locker room amongst the support staff, the coaches, the athletes. Now, every single one of us have things that are being thrown at us all the time. We don't know who's going to get ill, how they're getting ill, how I'm feeling, what's happening. There are multiple variables that are impacting our physiology and our psychology. And communication becomes the most important lever through which everyone comes onto the same plane where we can understand each other. Only when we understand each other, then we can start to trust each other, because we can start to give people the benefit of the doubt, or we can start to help them in areas that they're not competent. But everything starts from a foundation of trust. And everything starts from a foundation of communication. Sorry. Now, our personality starts to inform the way we communicate. So, as a person who specializes in team dynamics, and I really peel away a lot of the layers of understanding and decoding personality, because if I can teach a person to understand what are their communicative strengths, I can teach them how their brain processes information. This is going to do one of two things. It's going to help them have clarity of thought with respect to the goals that they want to achieve and the micro steps that they need to do to achieve it. And then the second thing is they're able to communicate that to every single person in the team. Now, once you have effective communication in a team environment, one of the main things that happens is we get to align expectations. Now, if expectations are malaligned, it's one of the first things that will be detrimental to performance. So, effective communication is the key to aligning all expectations so that everyone can deliver excellence in that environment. And this is in a very, very small nutshell how they all come together.
Yeah, coming on to this, very interesting actually, trying to understand the athletes basically, you're working closely with, and trying to bring that cohesiveness in terms of the expectation or the shared goal the teams have. Can you share for our audience one or two practical strategies that like understanding athletes is definitely one of the main primary goal of any assessment for a performance or a sports psychologist. So can you share one or two strategies so that our audience can even try that in their with their athletes or with their ecosystem?
Yeah, 100%. So for example, one of the ways in which we can build healthy communication in a team is we have a whole bunch of exercises. So one such exercise is what we call role playing. Now, you'll find out in an environment, generally the people who propose ideas are the leaders or the captains or the very senior people in a team or an organization. They are always the ones who are giving ideas. The people who are very, very junior are the ones who are always very quiet and listening. Now, over a period of time, you will get a type of person who becomes very, very cynical. And every time you suggest something, they don't think it's going to be a great idea for whatever reason. And then you get that person who, irrespective of what is said, they just support every idea without really doing the research diligence on whether that idea is good or not. Now, what I've just described are the four key roles that any person will play in a team. You are a person who proposes ideas, you oppose ideas, you support ideas, or you quiet and you're just reflecting on the conversation in the room. Now, what happens when you have a particular role and you only play that one role is that role becomes your identity. And once a role in a team becomes a person's identity, then depending on the situation, they can either be included or they could be excluded. But that will depend totally on the situation. So one of the fastest ways to build healthy team dynamics is what we call role switching, where as a leader in an organization, you assign different roles to people on a different day. So on one day, a person is someone who's proposing new ideas, or on a particular day, a person is only opposing ideas or only supporting ideas. And you keep switching those roles around. And what happens when you start to switch it around is you defragment identity from communication. So I cannot not like you for opposing an idea, because tomorrow I may be the person who's opposing your idea. So when you start to defragment identity from communication, you create a bedrock of safety. There's no more malice in there, because it's a simple role-playing situation, which is information gathering to optimize the goal or optimize the performance. So one beautiful exercise is this role-playing, where we assimilate different types of roles and keep switching and rotating those roles in a team. And then one of the most important things that I think we do well in sports, and I start to do it a lot in the boardroom, is called the debrief. Right. So all of us have exercises, all of us have activities, we have teams working around us. And one of the things that we don't do often enough is we don't debrief the pros and cons of that entire exercise or game or match or meeting. Now, if you don't debrief it, you've not assimilated all the learnings, which are pros and cons from that. And once you assimilate learnings, you can redirect it into process. But none of this can happen if you don't do what's called a debrief. So one of the other powerful exercises that you can do is weekly in an organization, do a debrief of the previous week, or do a debrief of a pitch that you did, or a meeting with a client you did, or a game that you did. You can even debrief a practice in there. And in that debrief, if you start to assign roles, the dynamics become very, very different. And you'll find that the energy in the team becomes very, very much more cohesive and very supportive towards growth.
Yeah, actually, I think this is really interesting to, first of all, learning from you that, switching role and, understanding the different roles and the role clarity and someone who is not really participating in the team conversation or something like that. And I think role switching become a very important strategy for
Yeah.
a team. So we can see that you come from a sports sciences background, and then you develop your uh, interest or knowledge inventory while gaining that experience doing those courses in psychology and organizational psychology. So how you blend and also there's an aspect where you, I think, have little interest into the spiritual aspect of a sports. If you can help us understand how you bring the blend of all these things into your professional thinking.
So, the spiritual aspect comes in because I came from a very spiritual family, and I also spent almost 4 years living in the Hare Krishna temple in South Africa. So how do I bring spirituality into sport? Is that, spirituality really and truly teaches you humility more than anything else. And humility is one of the foundations of learning, being open to asking questions, to learning from any single person that can teach you something. That's what humility does. And in the world of sport, we have a saying where we say, you are always a student of the game, irrespective of how many years you're playing. The greats will tell you they're still learning. They're always a student of that game, which means that the learning journey never ends. And humility, which is a spiritual principle, teaches you to be open to learning from anybody and everybody, which ensures that that growth mindset is very, very active, and it's a part and parcel of your journey throughout. So that's one of the key ways in which I integrate spirituality into it. And in the world of sport, we use a term, it's called coachable. We ask a question. We don't look at how talented you are or how skilled you are or what your data is. We look at, are you coachable? Which means that, are you able to unlearn and relearn things? And your ability to unlearn and relearn is a bigger predictor of how successful you will be, as opposed to the data you have, because the data is informing us about everything that happened in the back, behind you, in the past. But your ability to be coachable, your ability to unlearn, relearn, and even a lot of your psychology is informing me about how you would process information and how you would tackle situations in the future. Now, why would I hedge all my bets on past data when the problems of the future are going to be very, very different? So this is one of the key things that I start to bring in, and I use a lot of levers from spirituality to make athletes more coachable, to make them more comfortable with the process of unlearning and relearning.
So yes, actually, I think the kind of the area we belong to, like Southeast part, and we all have some spiritual background or belonging. We learn throughout our development or during our journey as we are growing up within our family. That do make sense to me. I don't know how uh, you know often the Western sports psychology or performance psychologists, they use this spiritual values, inculcation of spiritual values into their practices. So, my next question to you, Shamal, is, your experience is very, we see, 20 plus years spending in this industry. So you work with the senior men's team, you worked closely with the Igor Stimac and the squad. Can you share some insight from your work with the team? How you define that Indian football in terms of mentally where they are?
So Indian football is in a very interesting place. A lot of the boys are head and shoulders above everyone else. But at the national level, one of the big challenges that we have is we only see the boys 5 times in a year. Okay, so five FIFA windows, they come together, and that's when we play. And we get them for about a week or 10 days. Then they have to go back to the ISL club. So one of the big challenges we have is that, the head coach has his own methodology of playing, and the club coaches have their own methodology of playing. And sometimes what I've noticed is that the athletes struggle to move from one tactic or strategy to another. If you move them out of a different position or have a different strategy, the ability to adapt to that very quickly is not there. So, yes, we are producing good players. Our players are fitter, they're a lot mentally stronger, they're a lot more cognizant of healthy nutrition and healthy training plans. But because of our lack of exposure to quality football at a national and international level, right, we find our players sometimes are very restricted in their ability to adapt certain tactics and certain strategies based on new coaches. The second thing that I've noticed is that, generally, not even with football, generally across the table in Indian sports, is we tend to reward mediocrity a lot. So for example, I live in Barcelona. I go and watch some of the Barcelona football and Girona football junior academies play and the kids play. I'm seeing kids as young as 10, 12 years old. If they're kicking a ball to another player, they're not missing their target by more than 1 to 2 meters. It's just the person is one step away. They're very, very zoned in on the target, and they're training at that level of proficiency. In India at ISL level, if you ask a person to put a cross in, right, once you start to put him under pressure, the dispersion rate of that cross goes very, very wide, sometimes as wide as 10, 15 meters. Now, people with a dispersion rate of 10 to 15 meters shouldn't be in elite sport at all. That's not the level we're competing. But these are people who are highly, highly successful at that level. And they're successful at that level because, there's a high amount of mediocrity that's being rewarded on a continuous basis, because India's at that place right now where we want people to see sport as a career. So there's a lot of funding, a lot of opportunities, lots of it coming up. But the mere fact that that person will struggle to make it in any other system outside of India is indicative enough of the fact that maybe, right, we are sabotaging we're sabotaging their growth. Maybe we are sabotaging how their potential, by rewarding that level of mediocrity. And it's a catch-22 situation, because it would take decades for us to unravel this and to bring in that level of professionalism and excellence. So why should the people who are playing right now suffer, for that goal, which is going to really manifest in 10 to 15 or 20 years time? Everything is chicken and egg, but it all comes down to, how hard and how hungry is each individual? How difficult are they going to be with themselves? In our Indian national football team, I've seen and worked with players. One example I'll give you is Shante. Shante from Mumbai, one of the most incredible footballers, one of the most hardworking people. Every single day, dedicated with his food, dedicated with the way he trains. Sunil is exactly the same. Sandesh Jingan exactly the same. Highly disciplined, highly dedicated, putting in the work. But they're also playing in a team where a lot of people are not working at that same rate. And in a team performance game, what happens is the best and the worst level out to form that average and that mean. Now, one thing that people don't understand in teams is that you have to constantly raise the floor. The high achievers in any organization or in any team will take care of themselves. You can't coach them. No one can come in and say, I made Sandesh, I made Sunil, I made this person. No, those people make themselves through their work ethic. They're so disciplined in how they learn, how they train, how they do everything else. As a management team, our job is we are managing the average. Because if a person's really bad, they'll fall out of the team. They won't even belong there. Right? So a large part of the role of management is to lift the floor of the average so that the whole team is getting better with time. So there's a lot of different things that play into Indian sports and Indian dynamics. And some of them have easy solutions, but most of them do not. But it comes down to the personal will and desire to want to improve.
Yeah, very interesting to know that, how closely you've been so observant about the, intricacies of the football within the Indian football team. And yes, definitely the environment is usually complex when we talk about ISL football teams or national
Yeah,
teams. It is not really easy to maneuver with your skills and knowledge and trying to bring
yeah.
everyone on the same floor. Some discrepancies are always there that manifest into some time in a average kind of performance. So I want to ask you, Shamal. Actually, I know many sports psychology practitioners in India, my colleagues actually. So, so there are some conventional methods. I know you are familiar with those conventional methods when we talk about one-to-one sessions and how we profile the athlete, and then we do some sort of profiling of the athlete, keeping their data, and periodically kind of monitoring that data, giving them sessions, giving them a mental skill training plan or 2 week, 3 week, 4 week. People have now packages also nowadays. They are be like, okay, you do meditation these many days, then imagery these many days, goal setting is there. Some visualization of imagery scripts are there. What is your take? How your approach is different? First of all, I want to understand how your approach is different, or you really believe these skills are important and every athlete should work around these mental skills. And how helpful these mental skills are according to you?
So mental training skills are definitely important. I think the one thing that psychologists get wrong is that, for example, I don't work across in every single sport. I work in cricket, in football, in golf, in tennis, and marathon events. Even track and field, I don't work right across the spectrum from 1,000 to marathon. I work specifically with 42.2K marathon runners. Okay. Now, the reason I'm telling you this, that I don't work across all sports, is because this is what most psychologists don't understand, is that for you to have the impact on your athlete's life, you, as a psychologist, needs to understand every single thing about the sport and all of the rules. Because why? You're trying to mold a psyche of a person and you're trying to help them goal set and you're trying to understand the context of their stresses and their triggers, but that context only makes sense within the framework of that rule or that game. So if you are a sports psychologist, don't understand all of the rules of a game of sport, if you don't understand where the pressure comes into the game and goes out, if you don't understand tactically how a person can relieve pressure or how to analyze their mental and cognitive strengths and weaknesses in relation to strategy, in relation to tactic, you are in no position to help them, because you can go to any single YouTube page and get a meditation and breathwork exercise. You can go to any ashram in India, and there are millions everywhere, and all of them will teach you a meditation or breathwork, right? Will all of those breathwork techniques help those athletes? It'll help them calm them down, but the transference of that skill into practice may not be there. And the reason why the transference is not there is because the applicability of that skill in the match situation is not present. So this is where most psychologists get it wrong, is that we're trying to plug an intervention into someone's life without understanding the context of how that skill, which starts off as a quiet meditation in the room, how are you going to transition this into the match? How are you going to bring that part and parcel into the match? And that's one of the areas that I believe I'm really, really good at. I'm good at bringing in specific skills, teaching them, making it habitual, making it lifestyle, and then teaching them how to pull that practice into every single thing they do on the field, so that there's a nice merger, there's a nice dovetailing of that practice outside of the field and on the field. And the only way you can do that is when you understand the context through which the triggers apply in their game, and you understand them both technically, tactically, and psychologically.
Actually, this is really wonderful to know that, from your end that, yes, mental skill definitely, are really very important, as you just said. But I think I absolutely second you on the point that certainly many sports psychologists, they fail to connect the dots and bring that entire thing into actual performance, and in the training first, and obviously in the competition and performance uh, later. So this is a very important, I think, point and area. Probably we will talk more on these on this actually in future. That what are the possible ways basically we can use in our practice, to bring that what we know into actual performance and further, whatever desired outcome we are expecting. Uh, we are just heading toward almost, we've discussed plenty of these topics, and obviously your expertise in the area of team dynamics, leadership, cognitive sciences also, and sports sciences also, and wonderful way, and you find basically different solution to the different problems while you being in that environment. Uh, my next question, you work with the, with the business world as the corporates actually, with the companies, Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000. Uh, what kind of role you see, like in what kind of role you see yourself? What kind of challenges, how so organizational psychology to a certain extent, but I know about organizational psychology is, how to basically uh, develop the emotional intelligence skills, and then you also, focus more on the conflict resolution. But there are other aspects also. This is what I know because I've done little thesis or dissertation on that when I was, doing my master's. So can you please share this, your learning, your experience while working with those companies?
So a large part of my work with companies is I'm working with the CEOs and the C-suite leaders. And I am sort of like a coach to them. I am someone who's having conversations on them, decoding their communication challenges, decoding how they deal with stresses, what are some of the challenges in the teams, and I'm creating interventions with them. When as an organizational psychologist, I look at what is the organization flow like, what is the hierarchy in the organization, how is information moving. I'm looking at things that we can do from the CEO down and from the ground up that start to rebuild the culture, that make communication easy, that make trust easy, that create a culture of excellence where people feel like they can be recognized, there's autonomy, there's achievement, there's a career path that's trajectory, that's driven for them. So these are the things that I'm doing in an organization. It completely depends on various things. It depends on the market that they're working in. It depends on the cognitive experience and the psychology of the CEO or the leader or the C-suite people. It depends on the problem that they have, and it also depends on the goal that they want to achieve. Every single thing is very, very different. So there's no cookie cutter solution when I go into a corporate. A large part of the time, I'm just gathering information. I'm just listening to see what the problem is. Sometimes just by listening and by observing them, you start to see how the solution will take place. And one of the key things that I do, and I recognize and appreciate that not many people will be able to do this, is that before I even give them a suggestion or a solution or a plan, I spend a lot of my own time and money just to gather information. Sometimes I tell them, okay, no matter where the company is, I'm going to fly in at my own cost. I'm going to spend a couple of days there. I'm going to observe the CEO. I'm going to work, see the team. I'm going to do interviews with everyone. I underwrite the cost of data gathering research. I have an entire research team that's just mining data for me from that organization so that when I finally do present a solution, the solution is so crisp to what they want that we know how to take it and how to pull it into that organization. So as an organizational psychologist, if you want to work with someone, not everything can be the company's cost, and that's where most people fall short. They fall short because they want every minute to be billed. And before a company goes through that process of starting to pay you for every single thing, you need one of two things. You need a strong, heavy, research-driven proposal, or you need a lot of credibility behind you. So you must understand that as a consultant, when you're trying to engineer a solution in an organization, you're working your the people who are your competitors are massive companies. They're McKinsey, they're KPMG, they're Ernst and Young, they're Deloitte. These are the people who are also doing research, also gathering, also presenting solutions, and they're also working with experts. So once you understand what your competitive landscape is, then what you're prepared to do to get an advantage becomes very, very clear. But like any psychologist would tell you about goal setting, you can only set goals with clarity when you fully understand the environment you're working with, what are the pros and what are the cons. The exact same thing happens in business.
Yes, actually. One brief question regarding. So we have seen this, high performance culture developing, especially the high performance, system is around, and this system or this approach is not limited to the sports. Actually, we know that the high performing teams are there in other sectors as well. So how you draw the parallel between the high performance sports system and high performance corporate system or both teams? How
So
kind of different or similar things are there?
So I don't call it high performance. I call them elite performance systems. The first thing is high performance means you improving every single day. Now, because you improve doesn't mean you'll achieve your goal. So for example, if we use you or me as an example, let's assume our example is we want to have a successful podcast page, and your podcast page needs to earn you 20, 30 lakhs a month, and you want to have 1 million followers. So high performance means every month you're improving. So every month, if you add 5 followers, 10 followers every month, you're a high performer because you are improving. But that doesn't mean that you will get to your goal. Elite performance means there's a goal to get to, and you do whatever you need to get there. So the best teams in the world are elite performance teams. They leave the strengths and weaknesses aside. They align every single thing in the team to achieve a goal that's determined. So you'll see that there are lots of companies who every single month their burn rate is coming down or their turnover, they still won't become unicorns. And then there's some people who've got their mindset of becoming a unicorn, and within a few years they cross that threshold because the bar is there. They do everything to jump over or cross that bar. So the psychology between these two is very, very important to understand. It's a completely different mindset. You can be improving every single day by just learning, by just using it, by having conversations, doing that. Then the application of what you're learning to cross that threshold is a completely different thing. So there's a massive difference between high performance and elite performance. I don't use the language of high performance. I really differentiate into elite performance, and I work with people who've got a very, very high threshold point or a high goal to achieve, and we are prepared to pull all the resources we have in to make this work or make this happen. And the things that are common around them is, one is this mutual accountability. I am responsible to the person next to me, and the person is responsible to me. And mutual accountability gets presented through candor, which means that I can say what I need to say to anyone in the system. If I can do that, if candor exists, then what's happening is you can hold each other accountable. Once you hold each other accountable, then the organization starts to get better. The other key things that are great in elite performance teams is autonomy. You're not micromanaging people. You're giving them a lot of freedom to work. You're trusting them, and that autonomy links in with mutual accountability. Then the third is, a transparency of information is very, very important. The more people have the information, the more you're sharing that information, all of that is very, very important. And then remember, all teams go through a plateau, and the thing that gets them out of that plateau, and the plateau is generally before they reach the peak, is strong leadership. So every organization needs strong, strong leadership. Once you have strong leadership, a lot of things start to fall in place.
Yes, leadership is a very, very big topic actually to discuss. The intricacies of leadership within the different setup actually when we talk about the high performance sports teams, elite teams, or maybe corporate sector. So style of leadership or the requirement of the leaders are going to be different. uh, we are almost we just finished almost discussing all the very important essential points for this podcast. What a message you want to give to our Indian audience or Indian coaches and the leaders? So there is a coach leadership also. We have not discussed, but if you can briefly want to give your message to our audience, the coaches and the athletes.
Yeah, I think my message to everyone is, education is really, really important, but we're moving in a very, very fast world right now. So, by the time you come out of a university or get a degree or do a course, that information is really easily and freely available, and there's a good chance it makes no I wouldn't say it makes no sense, but its applicability is probably irrelevant at that stage, right? And the secret to success is, one is to obviously continuously learn, but the secret is the applicability of every piece of information. How are you applying that information, and how are you bringing something completely novel in the way they apply it, right? So because education becomes really obsolete, irrelevant, or very, very freely available very quickly, I think the thing that you have to really explore very diligently is curiosity. Curiosity has to be your North Star. Curiosity has to be your guide. When you see something could be a potential advantage for you, right? You have to be curious, you have to explore, you have to learn, you have to move in that direction. Like when I first did a master's in psychology, I was only thinking about sport. And then I went in and I was starting to work in corporates. I went and did an organizational master's because I realized that whilst I knew my subject, I didn't understand fully how information flows in an organization and the hierarchy in an organization. And I needed to really understand that to bring those two worlds together. So I was very curious on taking the learnings from sport into the business world. But for me to do that, I had to jump over a lot of hurdles to get there. But everything started with curiosity. So the willingness to explore curiosity is going to be the biggest gold mine for every single person. And I think if you can start to follow your curious mind, a lot of things will unravel.
Something I think in the last for something wrong with the internet. I guess for around 2 3 seconds I just lost you. I couldn't hear you.
So I was just saying to everyone, just be as curious as you possibly can and follow that completely throughout. Whatever you're curious about, explore it, learn about it, see how you can connect the dots. Curiosity won't lead you down the wrong path.
Yes, actually, certainly, I agree. Actually, you need to be a little curious, actually, if you are an intelligent individual, want to explore the world and want to explore the opportunities, even create opportunities for yourself. Uh, Thank you so much, Mr. Shamal, for being on our podcast for Sports Psych Talk. And I request you to please, if you can, ask our audience to follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We are just trying to create some intellectual content for the specific or a kind of the audience, those who consume on the intellectual content. Uh, uh, you know,
No problem, no worries. Once it's ready, I'll send you the link. Once you edit it, we'll share it, we'll post it, and we'll support you. And congratulations, you're doing a very good job. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone. Just go and watch this episode on YouTube. Uh, and thank you once again. Thank you, Shamal.
Thank you.